morning, friends. I'm just making sure that this works. Good morning, everyone. I hear that I am live right now, so I hope you've all had a very pleasant morning so far. We're just going to wait for a few more of our friends to join us this morning. But today, if you didn't know and you can't tell from our little label down below, I'm going to be teaching everybody about my favorite food, or one of my favorite foods, bread. I love bread. So, it's like my favorite thing in the entire world. I'm going to turn down my phone so I can look at the chat room with you guys. So I changed things up a little bit today with my setup. We have our lovely little logo right down over here. And you're also going to see a little bit more of my kitchen today. Now, this activity is a little bit more hands-on. Oh, oops! Somebody used foul language. Ooh, yes, please don't do that. Not on this channel. We like friendly language here, please. But today what we're going to start with the basics, we're going to go over sourdough, if you know what that is, and then I'm going to teach everyone how to make your own bread straight from your home. It doesn't take very many materials at all, to be honest with you. You should be able to find all the things that you need today in your house. I am going to go turn down my jazz music just a little bit. I just got a note that it's a little too loud for you this morning. So we're going to adjust a little bit, wait a couple more minutes. If you have any questions for me right now, I'm happy to answer them. Oh, thank you, John. Oh, my wonderful roommate. My ears! Oh, no. I'm so sorry that my music is so loud. Well, I turned it down. So hopefully that made it a little better for your lovely little ears. I'm sorry, D-Dreads. What else? Did you guys have fun with Dejani yesterday? Were you able to see her house and making music out of materials you could find in your house? It was super cool. I wish I had enough stuff in my house to create that thumb piano. But because we have a bunch of cats here, it's a little hard for me to find materials like that because they get into it. And thank you, HippoPhoto112 and XD Dreads for following us. We really appreciate that. Hopefully you'll come see us every morning, Monday through Fridays, 10 to 11, to come see what we do here. Oh, volume is now good. Okay, great. Good. I'm glad to hear that the volume is good. And don't worry if your English isn't good. No worries. English isn't my first language either. I'm actually Vietnamese. So my first language that I learned at home was Vietnamese. And English came second. And I definitely remember growing up and how those two different languages would get mishmashed in my ear. And everyone has that kind of horror story of calling their teacher mom by accident. I did that, and I brought it to another level. I called her mom in Vietnamese on accident. So I remember that, and that was a little crazy. And you already saw Poseidon this morning, so that's good. About one more minute before we get started here. But I was talking about Dejani yesterday and how cool that class was. And what I loved about it is that it went really well with Elliot's class from the day before, which was about music production. And the cool thing about his class is that every single program that he used was completely free and completely accessible to you right now, even if you don't have anything. Do we stream on multiple platforms or only Twitch? Thank you for your question, XD Dreads. We just stream right now on Twitch and Twitch only. We might eventually move some of our archives over to YouTube after 24 hours. But I do know that you can find us on our website. We have our videos archived there. We have it archived on Twitch. And eventually, I'm sure we'll move over to YouTube. I'm not sure about any other platforms, but if you have an idea and you'd love to see us on anything else, please put a comment down below or email us or find us on our website, www.2bitcircus.org. Oh, and it's 10 a.m. So good morning, everyone. Good morning from sunny Burbank. That's where I'm at right now. And we're going to start off your Thursday morning with bread making. Now, I won't start off our class right away with bread making, but we're going to talk a lot about bread today. And of course, as always, thank you to Vans, our sponsors, for making these streams available to you every morning during the week, Monday through Fridays. We love our sponsor, and we're so happy to be partnering with them. But on to bread. And I am pumped to be presenting again to 2-Bit Circus. Thank you for having me. I've got my 2-Bit Circus logo shirt on. It's fashionable, always in style, and it's a little chilly here, so I've got my big button up around it. So as I said, we're talking about bread today. And who here loves bread? Nearly everybody, right? We have all different sorts now. We have gluten-free bread. We have ancient grain bread. That's right, Poseidon. All of our favorite breads. Sweet breads, salty breads, all different types. Ooh, I see Gabe likes bread. Thank you, Gabe. Me too. Everyone does. Agree, 2-Bit Circus. Everyone loves bread. Oh. Stark says, when I was hungry, I would ask my grandparents for, may I have bread? I love it. It's like from David Copperfield where the little orphans walk up and he's like, please, can I have some more? That's me with bread every time. If I see a bread basket, it's going into my mouth and into my stomach. I love it so much. But as I was just talking about, we have all different types of bread. There, as I said before, there's sourdough, multigrain, ancient grain, sweet breads like raisin bread. I actually really like that cinnamon raisin bread with a little bit of butter. Salty sweet, so good in the morning. And then there's also white bread, regular wheat bread. I think I've named most of the breads that I know off the top of my head. Oh, it's Trixie Mattel. Thank you, Stark Sonnet. I love Trixie Mattel. Sourdough is my favorite too, 2-Bit. That's why I'm starting off with sourdough today. Now, if you didn't know anything about sourdough, it is one of the most ancient leaven breads that we have. And leaven means that it actually rises. So bread, most of the time when you make it, it does need time to rise. Otherwise, it doesn't get that fluffy texture that you want it to. And it'll just be very, very flat, almost like a naan or matzah bread, like matzah crackers. Those are unleavened bread, which means that they do not rise. So they stay pretty thin and tiny and almost like a cracker when you eat them, versus the sponginess that you get in leavened breads. So I wanted to show you the newest member of our family, my little sourdough baby. Here she is in her perfect little container. I love her. I'm going to be feeding her over the next couple months. Oh, yes, Starkzone is right. You get matzah with Passover coming up. So if you want to learn a little bit more about matzah, maybe I'll tell you more next time. But this is my sourdough baby. She's going to be living with me for the next couple months before I bake her into a bread. And that's because sourdough is a living bread. Now, I don't mean living as it's going to crawl out of its container and jump at you at nighttime, but the yeast inside of it is alive, so you do have to feed it every now and then. So if you're not prepared to make sourdough right away, because it does need a little bit of time to make sure that it's good, you're going to want to feed it. Otherwise, your sourdough won't be able to maintain its structure and do exactly what you need it to. Ooh, pardon me. Wipe my nose. So, we're going to feed my sourdough bread today. That's what I'm going to teach you. So, what you see in here is a sourdough starter. As you can see, it's actually separated from the dough itself and the liquid up top, and that's totally normal and perfectly fine. And all you do if you see your dough separating like this is that you stir it up together to mix it together. So, I have my instructions right in front of me to teach me how to feed this starter. Now, sourdough does need a starter because sourdough has a mother dough, and what that means is that mother dough originally came from the original sourdough that was ever made. That's the theory. With boudin, I'm sure they absolutely do that in their bakery, but as starters in our own house, we have to make our own starters, and that's a pretty easy recipe to follow. It just takes all-purpose flour, salt, sugar, dry yeast, and lukewarm water. You mix those ingredients together, and that's how you get your starter to start to make sourdough, but you gotta wait a little bit on her. And then once it's at this point where it's been waited on a little bit, it smells sour like you want it to because you want to smell that fermentation. And what fermentation means it's a very fancy long word that means that it's spoiling or it's going bad, but in a good way. Fermentation is not the same as when things go bad or moldy or disintegrate. That process actually helps out that food that you eat. So sourdough is a good example of fermentation food. There's a lot of fermentation food in Asian cultures like kimchi, fish sauce, which is buried, and then they put it in a clay pot, bury it for a long time, and then when you open it up, you get all that sauce in there. So there's different cultures who use these different methods to help make their food. And because we didn't have refrigerators all the way back in the way back, they had to make sure that they could still use food that sometimes went bad because no refrigerator, so nothing could stay cold. So sometimes things went a little bit sideways, and we found that it could still equally be delicious, like blue cheese. But I digress. I'm talking a lot today about this sourdough. I know a lot about it. I'm a big fan, you can tell. So, once we got our sourdough together, and we are not going to make it into a dough this week. No, because it has not sat enough. I usually suggest that most of your dough stays for a couple of months, if not a year, so that it can properly get all those goodies inside of it to create that amazing soury taste that you get in sourdough. So I have my starter in front of me, and at least once a week I'm going to add half a cup of lukewarm water and all-purpose flour. So I've got my all-purpose flour right here. It comes in bigger bags as well. I should go grab my cups because I forgot them. And don't forget, always wash your hands when you are cooking. You are making food with your hands that go into somebody else, and we want to make sure these little digits stay clean. Not just right now, but always. So 20 seconds is a great idea, and I'm sure you've already seen all the washing videos, but you want to get everywhere, even in between the fingers, on your thumbs, in your pads, on the knuckles. So I'm going to do that real fast while I go grab some measuring cups. Giving my hands an extra little washy. Grabbing all my measuring cups and spoons. I thought I had everything with me, but I did not. No good. All right, now I'm back and I've got everything around me. So, half a cup of, I almost spilled all my sourdough. That would have been very, very unfortunate. I would have been very sad. So, I'm going to take a half a cup of this all-purpose flour. And place it in the dough. Wrap that up. Put it in. And then I boiled some water in a kettle earlier. You want lukewarm, not too boiling, and I let it sit for a little bit. Alrighty, and that's about a half cup of water. And what I actually suggest whenever you're measuring water, I know I didn't do it this time, but there are different measuring tools for water or liquids and then for solid objects. I thought it didn't really matter as a kid when I was cooking with my mom, but surprisingly so, it does matter. It matters quite a lot. Sometimes it's a little different. So, as you can see, I added all my magical ingredients in there. It looks a little messy right now, and then I'm going to just stir it with a wooden spoon. Now, I like using wooden or bamboo utensils at home because, well, do you want your food to taste like plastic? Probably not. So that's why I avoid using plastic utensils unless I am serving, then I will use plastic in that manner. But you don't want the plastic heating up on that hot pan and potentially releasing any sort of stuff that you don't want. And then I find that metal utensils really scrape up my pans, which I'm very sad about. So it has been my forte, and by the suggestion of a wonderful chef named Mr. Wolfgang Puck, you guys might know him, he does suggest using bamboo or wooden tools so that you not only save your pans and pots and the stuff that you've invested in for your kitchen, but also it'll help out with the flavor of your food because then you're not getting any sort of weird plastic aftertaste or anything like that. So you're going to stir until you don't see any lumps anymore, which is going to take me just a little bit here. But while I'm stirring the sourdough, I can give you some fun sourdough facts. So as I already said, mother dough is the original sourdough that was ever created. And every little bit of sourdough that you taste now, especially from a bakery like Boudin, has a little bit of that original sourdough in it, which is kind of crazy and really, really cool all at the same time. It's like you're eating a part of history every single time you eat sourdough bread. Let's see. It's the oldest recorded use of sourdough is actually from ancient Egyptian civilizations. So who knew that? The ancient Egyptians were way ahead of our time and definitely created something delicious called sourdough bread. And the sour taste that you sense in sourdough actually comes from the lactobacillus in there, which is a type of bacteria. And it lives in symbiosis with, let me slow myself down. Symbiosis means it lives in harmony with the other materials in here, the other ingredients in here. So it lives in symbiosis with the yeast, and it feeds on the byproducts of the yeast fermentation, which we were talking about earlier, that creates this awesome, amazing, soury taste in the bread. The sourdough taste itself comes from the lactic acid produced by that lactobacillus, excuse me. Oh no! Oops, yes, please refrain from using foul language, guys. We do appreciate it. We do have a lot of little ears here today. The lactobacillus in there also helps the bread last longer without spoiling. My goodness, we're almost there with my bread down here. And then I've also heard that diabetics can benefit from eating sourdough because it's got less sugar in there. Because the bread recipe I'm about to show you later last time I used about 1 tablespoon of sugar, which was just enough for me. But a lot of the bread that we buy in store actually has a lot of sugar in it to begin with, and sometimes that's why it tastes so good, because sugar reacts differently in your body and your brain, and it becomes an addictive property, which is why we're always so cautious and telling you guys to be careful how much sugar you intake on a regular basis. Oh no, Starks on it. I'm sorry that there's a glitch. I hope I didn't say anything that hurt your feelings. I hope you're all good. Yes, I know. I was saying the same thing, Dr. Leah Haynes. I was like, that would have been very surprising if she did. Oh, yes, and we issue you a formal apology, Starks on it. Looks like we're still working out some bugs. Oh, you're just getting hungry. I wish I could give you smell-o-vision through here. I'm gonna be honest, baking bread, I didn't realize how difficult it was until I started doing it. I have an immense sort of pride and respect and admiration for bakers, especially people who bake bread. I baked my first loaf of bread earlier this week, and it stayed in the oven for almost 8 hours, 6 hours. I don't remember. But it was a very long time, and it got to be close to midnight, and it needed 2 more hours, and I was too tired, so I shut off the oven. You're gonna see what that first loaf looks like today, because I have it in front of me. Well, I'm not gonna stir this anymore because I'm keeping you guys, and I've run out of sourdough facts that I know off the top of my head. So as you can see, the mixture inside of here is a little bit more smooth. It's almost like a glue paste, if you can see. Yeah, it's got a few little chunks left in there, so I'll get back to that a little later, but no need to do it now. And often at times, after you're done mixing everything together, what they do suggest is that you leave it in a warm spot overnight. I don't know what that means. Overnight. And I don't know if you knew this, I didn't know this until recently, but that little rack underneath your oven is a warming area. I used to think it was where my trays were supposed to go, but it actually stays really warm in there, and it's a warming area to put all your food that you've already cooked, but you want to make sure that it still stays warm. So that's where I'm going to put our little little sourdough baby right now. So I'm going to go put her there and let her sit there overnight so that all those lactobacillus bacteria does its work and makes this into yummy, yummy bread. And maybe if I'm twitching next month, I will show you guys updates on my little sourdough baby because I love her and I'm excited to try her out. But we're going to start on the thing that you really came here for, which is me teaching you how to make your own bread in your house. So I hope you were able to get my little ingredients list off of our website or by email. If not, I can tell you them now. What you're going to need today is some lukewarm water, warm milk, butter, unsalted preferably, sugar, active dry yeast, or just regular yeast. I found mine at my local Italian store, so I'm excited about that. Shop small business, support small business. So we've got yeast in here. 6 cups of whole wheat flour. Okay, so this recipe says 6 cups. I did 6 cups last time. Let me show you the monster that was made from 6 cups of flour. This is my monster of a loaf that I baked my first time. It is huge. I don't know if you can see it in its full entirety, but if I hold it up to my face, it's bigger than my face. So imagine that, a loaf bigger than your face. So, hi! Oh, a friend of mine knows me here. Hi, friend! Thanks for joining in on my Twitch. And yes, we will make this bread. But as you can see, 6 cups of flour is a little bit much. So I'm going to try 4 or 5 today. I'll show you how to eyeball it in a way where you can make sure that you have enough flour, but not too much. Because 6 ended up being way too much, and John had to pour like 3 times more water in there, and then we had a loaf that was like bigger than my head. It was no good. It is amazing. So what I used instead of a whole wheat grain was this gluten-free ancient grain mix that I have right here. I thought it was going to cause issues because I couldn't get whole wheat flour during this time, but it's not. It's quite delicious, and I would say the only thing with the gluten-free ancient grain flour is that you want to bake this for much, much longer. I don't know if it's the particular grains in here or something because I haven't tried wheat yet, but it does take a lot longer because it is very, very dense. And this recipe actually calls for a standing hand mixer, so if you have that, good on you. Congratulations, your job's about to be so much easier. Oh! Yay, gluten-free, yay! Okay, so that's why I pick certain ingredients because I'm somebody who actually has a lot of issues with some dietary restrictions like lactose and sometimes gluten. I find that it really bogs me down energy-wise, so I try to avoid it if I can. Oh, sorry, but as I was saying about the standing mixer is gonna cut down your work. It's gonna be so much fun, but you wanna be like me and be like an original baker back in the 1800s who was in their little bakery shop making everything by hand for hours, then we're going to use our 2 little digits right here. Something that's completely free, doesn't need to be plugged in, but it will take a little bit of effort, so please keep that in mind, my friends. The first thing we're going to do is grab a big bowl. And I mean big. I grabbed my biggest Pyrex bowl and it was not big enough. This is the only bowl that I have that is big enough to fit all these ingredients and let me mix them together with my hands. So this is about the size that I suggest, which is about the size of a big salad bowl. That's my interpretation. Oh, thank you guys. Oh, I'm loving these compliments. You're so very, very sweet, and I think you're all awesome. You're actually making this time pass by so much quicker. I am having so much fun with you guys, and this is definitely keeping the fact that I have to stay at home much better because I get to share my love with you. So, big bowl. Already said big bowl. You're going to stir half a cup of water, 1 or more tablespoons of sugar. It depends on how much you like it. So I would say 3 tablespoons is good for somebody who likes their bread when they're bought out of the store and it kind of has that little sweet bite. But then everyone else. But then myself, who likes just regular bread, I'll use only 1 tablespoon. And that worked out really, really well last time. and then 3 tablespoons of yeast. I did this backwards the first time. I put the water in first and then the dry ingredients. Please don't do that. Instead, why don't we put the dry ingredients first? So I'm going to take out my yeast. Active yeast will look a lot different than this. So this is regular yeast. This is not the dried version that you'll usually find in packets. But for the active dry yeast users, you're going to use those 3 little packets that they give you. That's about 3 tablespoons worth. And you do want to be conservative, so you don't want 3 heaping tablespoons. But, but you do want enough. So as you can see, okay, this is me discovering this for the first time. I'm going to come closer to you guys. This is what yeast looks like in its regular form. It's almost like a rubbery brick. I've never experienced this before. This is amazing. So I'm sharing this for the first time with everyone here. But it smells a little bit floral, I think, or fruity. It smells like fruity. It's very interesting. But we're going to take our little tablespoon measuring spoon, and we're going to scoop 3 of these out. Now, when you're working with regular yeast compared to the active yeast, it is very, very rubbery, my friends. It is weird. I think so too. Oh! And there goes all the yeast. So we do want to be careful. And I've got all of my yeast in there, and I will vacuum that up later. Always keep your kitchen clean. As I remember from Ratatouille, the mark of a chef, messy apron, sleeves are clean. So this always stays clean. This is usually always dirty. And what I also like as a trick for myself in the kitchen is that I keep one clean hand and I keep one dirty hand. So when I'm working with raw ingredients or anything like that, I use my dirty hand or my left hand to grab the raw meat, and then I keep my clean hand or my right hand to hold onto knives or anything else that doesn't touch any raw products. This way you always know what is your dirty hand versus your clean hand, and that way you don't run around going like this, going, can somebody help me? Happens to me all the time. So I've got my yeast in there. As you can see, it's all gunky at the bottom right there. I'm going to add in that 1 tablespoon, 1 tablespoon of sugar. That's 1 tablespoon right there. We're going to grab our sugar. I have not tried this with brown sugar yet, so I do not know what that will taste like. If that's what you have, or honey. I'm not really sure, but those are substitutes that can absolutely be used for sugar instead. I absolutely agree with you, Starks, on it. You're not done cooking till you're done cleaning. That is right. You want to make sure that your area always stays clean because this cuts down on cross-contamination, which is a fancy word of saying you might get sick if you touch the raw chicken to your vegetables. So we don't ever want that. So you always want to keep your station clear and never mix raw and cooked materials. So there's always 1 cutting board for your raw food and 1 cutting board for your vegetables or anything else like that. Well, Gabe, we will tell your boyfriend that. Gabe's boyfriend, you're not done cooking until you have done cleaning, okay? So I've got I've got the yeast and the sugar in here, and now comes the water. I do want to start with 1/2 cup. I did find that I needed more later on, but that's hard to pinpoint right now. So I'm pouring about 1/2 cup in here on my measuring cup, and I'm pouring it inside of our little water. Pour a little bit more in there, and then I'm going to stir. I usually prefer stirring with a whisk, my friends. Oh, I wish I brought this all with me. I thought I did. Okay. I usually like a whisk because whisking helps make things move a little bit around a little more. It's a handy tool. It's better than using a fork, in my opinion, but that's my opinion. Ratatouille is a reference point for anything. That is very true. It's a great little show, and I love the fact that it reinforces the idea that anyone can cook, because that's the truth. Anyone can cook as long as you have hands and curiosity. Then you're good to go. You can make anything. So I've mixed all my ingredients together, and I will show you what that looks like because it's a little funky. So all of this liquid right down here that you can see, that is all of my ingredients mixed together at the very, very bottom. So I've mixed everything into liquid form, and I'll set that to the side. Oh, good. I'm glad your kids love cooking. I love cooking too. It's actually a great family activity. So moms and dads, cooking is a great way to get your children involved. You can start off with basic ideas for them, like basic prepping. So have them cut, mince, peel, explore the vegetables and the food that they're trying out, so that they not only get tactical information, but they also get to understand maybe how it grows. Did it grow in the ground, or is it on a plant? And then see how that affects the textures and tastes of everything. So it's always a good activity. I love cooking with kiddos. It's my favorite pastime. So we've mixed those three in here, and then we are going to start making a mixture of, let's see, dough. I think we're going to do the dough next. Yes, yes, yes. Oh, I'm on my wrong recipe. I'm on my starter. No wonder why I was confused. I was like, that doesn't make any sense. Okay. Now, we're going to set aside this bowl of our mixed materials for 5 minutes. We're going to just leave it to the side. And in a separate bowl, what I'm going to need John, my lovely assistant, to do for me is he's going to warm 2 cups of milk and 2 tablespoons of butter in the microwave. So what I do is I use my liquid measuring cup to get 2 cups of water into a Pyrex bowl. And then I cut off 2 tablespoons of butter. Usually when you buy butter in the long rectangular bricks, they'll have markings on the side of, I'll just show you right now. It has markings on the side, as you can see right here, to tell you what's the easiest way to cut things. So because we had used this end for waffle making earlier this week, we're going to use this end and cut off right here where it says 4 tablespoons. That's just going to get dropped into the warm milk, and you're going to put it in the refrigerator. You're going to put it in the microwave for about, I would say, 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes, 2 cups of milk. So that everything is melted together. So when it pulls out, we'll show you in just a minute what it should look like. Today I'm using lactose-free milk as well as unsalted butter. So it is dairy-free in a sense with the lactose-free, and it's not because I use the butter. But it's up to everyone. You can use whatever you'd like. I found that using the lactose-free milk didn't change the bread at all. I found that using the regular butter didn't really change it. I would say if you use margarine instead of regular butter, you will probably sense a change because margarine is not butter. It is completely different from butter. So I do not suggest using that because it won't give you the right flavors. So we're waiting for the top to get frothy on the yeast, and you should be able to see that because it starts getting little bubbles, and it looks a little bit white on the top, like if there was just fresh snow down on there. Gabe is right. Like Honey Boo Boo says, more butter, more better. Actually, I have found that the best cooking tip I've ever gotten from really famous chefs, like the chef who created Koji. I watch him a lot on Netflix, but he has changed my way of cooking quite a lot. He adds way more salt and way more butter into a lot of things than I ever have in my life. And I'm very conservative with that because of the fact that I don't want to eat too much over-processed fats, and in addition, and I don't want to eat too many salty foods. Roy Choi, that's his name, Roy Choi. He's amazing. He is a genius. But I have really taken his advice to heart about more butter, more salt. As long as you have a careful eye and you're not dumping things on it, it really does elevate the taste of the food. Salt and butter, any sort of salt or fat will always elevate your food. That's why asparagus with bacon tastes so good. Brussels sprouts with bacon taste so good. Anything with bacon tastes so good. Yes, Koji is amazing. And what's awesome about Koji is that I've seen it a couple times at our 2-bit events. So I would keep my eye on the events we throw, guys, because we might bring the Koji truck and it's delicious. Like, Mexican, Korean cuisine, just so beautiful. They melt so well together. So we're waiting on the butter right now. And once the butter and warm milk come out, I'm going to take those ingredients and slowly pour them into my big ingredients. Now, you don't want to wait too long on your yeast to froth. Really 5 minutes max, because if it gets too frothy, then it'll start exploding when you try to bake it, which is not a good idea. And you know what's crazy? You know your yeast is working when you can hold it up to your ear, just like so, and you can hear it popping. You can hear like little bubbles bursting. It's really cool. I wish I could show you, but the sound is so quiet. I have to bring it that close to my ear to hear it. So you know your yeast is working when that is working. And you can see that there's ever so slightly just a bit of froth at the top. There's a bit of froth right there. Bread ASMR. That's right. Bread ASMR has to deal with this. It's awesome and amazing. John's going to pass me back the milk and the butter soon. Always make sure that your butter is completely melted. It can't be chunky. It's got to be all the way melted into your milk. Ooh, good idea, Jindog09. Ghee. Now, if you don't know what ghee is a very, very, how do I explain this? It's butter on steroids is essentially what ghee is. It's very popular in a lot of Indian cooking. It's delicious. It smells really good. It comes in a jar, I believe, and it's super, super yellow and potent. But ghee is another good substitute. Thank you for that, Jindog. I appreciate their little comments being made. We're still waiting on that butter. It takes a little bit. But after this, once you get the butter and yeast in here, then you're going to start adding the flour. Now, when it comes to adding flour or any dry ingredient at all, especially when you have to add a lot of it, go slow. Like, make sure that it's all liquefied before you add in another cup when you're stirring. Otherwise, you start getting clumps later, which is no good. Ooh, Stark's on is making potatoes with schmaltz today. That sounds good. Oh, and Jade Dog did want to mention that you only use half the amount of butter if you're using ghee because it's so concentrated. You don't want to go the full way, otherwise there might be complications. All right, it looks like the butter and the milk is ready. I'm gonna just get that from John. He says it's still chunky. It's okay. We'll just make this all work together. So I slowly poured all my ingredients in there, my wet with my semi-dry ingredients, and I'm gonna just stir that all around, make sure that's all good to go. And if you do find that it's still chunky and you're just feeling really impatient with the microwave, you can stir it, and usually the friction with the warm milk and everything else will help create this amazing mixture right here. I'm almost done with like getting a few more of the small pieces of butter in here to completely melt. Oh, Gabe says hi, John.
Hi, Gabe.
He says hi, Gabe. Okay, so I have my liquid mixture in here, and now I'm going to start adding the flour. This is if when you have the standing mixture, feel free to add all the flour at once and go for your life, because you've got electric help. But I don't, not today. I'm gonna bake it like they did in the olden days, so I'm gonna go just use my hands and this whisk. So, measuring cup, as you can see, it says 1 right there. And this is what I'm gonna use in the flour. So 1 cup. About that is good. And I pour it into my liquid mixture right here. And I'm going to stir and stir and stir and stir until that is all into a paste. And you're going to repeat this at least 3 more times. I'm going to see today how many cups of flour I can get in here before I decide that it is good. Now, the texture that you're wanting your dough to be, you want it to be a little bit pasty, a little bit solid. If it's too liquid, then it's not ready. And if it's too dry, like you find that it's coming off in flakes like it did for me the first time I tried this, especially with 6 cups of flour, a lot of flour, it doesn't have enough wet ingredients. So add a little bit more lukewarm water in there. To my friends who make pancake mixes or waffle mixes regularly, you want it to be a lot more solid than that. Because after 2 cups of flour is right where I usually have The texture that's being created right now is usually the texture that I have in my waffles or pancakes. It's a little bit more of a liquid batter. You can tell that it's very viscous. So this is about 2 cups of flour in. As you can see, the dough moves around a lot. It's like a pancake or a waffle batter. That's not good enough. We don't need that for bread. It's not solid enough because we need to be able to knead this bread with our hands. About a 1/3 cup in. So 3 so far. Stir this one in as well. I mean, can you imagine all those loaves of bread that people used to make just with their hands? And how complicated that must have been, and how many hours and how many people had to be a part of that journey to make it all a reality? Whew! It's a lot of work, my friends. Baking bread is not easy. So I hope that you remember while you're trying this yourself and when you're going at home to thank those bakers, those artisans, those food makers, food creators, food innovators around you. When we get back into the world, we should thank them for all their hard work and all the love that they bake into their products. Because this is hard work, guys. I'm only at 3 cups of flour in, and I'm almost at the dough consistency I want. So you can see right now it's starting to get stickier and stickier, which is exactly what I want. So let's try about one more. Let's go for 1 more cup of flour. So that will be 4 out of that 6 that we had. Because I don't believe in 6 cups of flour, because it doesn't work. So here's my 4th going inside, and I'm going to mix it more and more. And eventually you're going to start finding that your whisk is getting harder and harder for you to whisk all these materials because they're not so liquid anymore. They're getting solid. So at this point, you're going to want to remove your whisk once I get all the dough out. It is a big piece of dough. And it just wants to hold on for its dear life. I'm going to splash my hands with some more water real fast so that when I touch these ingredients, my hands are not dirty. Even though we know they're clean, since I just washed them, cleanliness, cleanliness, cleanliness is always, always on par. So I'm going to go do that very quick so that I have my hands, my little paws, ready. Alright, we have splashed our hands with water. This is also going to help you not hold on to the dough as hard. So, clean hands. I'm going to go in. So, my hands are in my dough batter right now, and I'm mixing everything together with my hands. Yes, friends, I think 4 cups of flour is going to be enough. I'm feeling the dough right now, and it's right at that consistency that I like it. I might add in 1 more cup because it's still a little too viscous right now. It's a little too squishy. I don't know how I feel about it. I might just leave it here. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. So what I'm doing with my hands, maybe I can get John to help me out to show you guys what I'm doing over here once he gets back into the kitchen. I am literally just taking the dough and folding it up and folding it over and just using my hands to mix everything together in here in any sort of way, shape, or form that they want to go into. And I'm just collecting all the loose dough in here and making it into the mixing it into the big mound that I have. You know, I think 4 is going to be good enough, friends. I think 4 is enough today because I'm starting to have some extra dough and flour at the bottom that I'm not being able to mix into the bigger part of the dough very well. So if you find that this is happening and you're like, oh man, like maybe I should add more water, please do. Always experiment. Now, and there are simple solutions to what you need. So if it's too dry, add some more water. If it's too wet, add some more flour. Oh yes! That's very, very right, Gabe. Not only are you making bread, but you're getting a really good workout. It is true. I threw my dough around while I was kneading it last time, and it was a workout. So, and this does take time. You do have to knead it properly. If you do not knead this bread properly, or if you actually over knead it and kill it, then I actually need more flour in this. So that's why we always keep our hands and our station clean, is so that we can always add in extra ingredients. So I'm going to throw in like a sprinkling of flour in here more to make it more dry because now it's too wet. You have to put a lot of effort into this. You should start feeling, like if you're kneading it correctly, you should start feeling the dough getting tougher and tougher. That means it's getting denser and denser, but you don't want it too dense. You don't want to over knead it because then you're going to have a loaf that mimics almost like a fruit cake. Nobody likes fruit cake. I don't know anybody that likes fruit cake. If any of you like fruit cake, I apologize for insulting your favorite food. But I'm just kneading it now, and a good way to knead if you don't feel confident in it is just to fold up different parts of the bread and start pushing it down and folding up another corner of the bread and pushing it down. I've also been given the note that if you add in half all-purpose flour instead of just the plain wheat flour, that can also help with the kneading and the rising that needs to be done. But it looks like my loaf is actually pretty good right now. I'm really happy with it. A lot happier than I did the first time. So understand that this is trial and error too, and that is completely okay. And if you mess it up, oh well, you learn something new, right? Because that's how I felt about my loaf. My first loaf, I was like, oh, I don't really know what I'm doing here, and I'm playing around. But it ended up being completely edible, even though it's not the prettiest thing in the world. So I'm going to fold this a few more times because the dough is getting to a texture that I like. We're almost there. We're almost at the toughness that I want. So honestly, this recipe calls for maybe about 4.5 cups of flour and just a splash more water, so maybe 3/4 cups of water to make a really good bread. And that's all cooking is too, is about adjusting what feels good to you, what is good with your taste. Do you not like salt? Maybe there's something else we can add in there instead. That's the thing about cooking that people like to forget about, is that a recipe is really more of a loose guideline to tell you what you need to do. And then it's up to you to create new things. That's how we get fusion foods. That's how we get different new takes on different parts of animals. It's from people just experimenting and having fun. So let me show you my dough. She's sticky. This is my little dough! Yay! She's the perfect size. So this is about the bread loaf size that you want. When it was 6, it was at least double this size. So let's stick with the 4.5. So this is what your dough should look like. You can tell she's in a good little ball. She's pretty dense, and she's my baby. I love her. Okay, now I'm gonna ask John to take the laptop with me, so you guys can follow me around. So he's gonna follow me this way. Woohoo! All right. So, welcome to my apartment, everybody. You're seeing more of my apartment than I wanted you to, but that's okay. Turn all the way this way, please, John. So, as you can see right here in our lovely little kitchen, can you turn it down, tilt it down just a little bit? Thank you. We have, and a little bit this way, please. Thank you. We have a Instant Pot ready in line. So on the inside is some parchment paper in there, and that's what you're going to want to use inside to make sure that your dough does not stick to everything else. Now I've got dirty hands, so I'm going to just lift everything. Put the dough inside in the center. So it should look just like that when you're inside. And then you can add a tea towel. That's what I like to do. So that's what this is on top, to make sure that the condensation does not fall down into the bread. So just like that, and you want to turn it on high. High! Yay! And then, of course, as always, wash your hands for that 20-second time limit that we need to. I know we've all sang songs. I believe somebody has been doing General Leia Organa's speech, the one where she's like, General Kenobi, you helped my father in the Clone Wars. I really need to memorize that one to start doing that one next. My personal favorite right now, because we just had watched Frozen 2, is just singing to my heart's content. You know, like Elsa at 3 a.m. Just going, into the unknown, into the unknown. That's just me cleaning my hands. So, now that I've got them at the designated 20 seconds that I needed to, and wipe down my station again. Wipe down everything. If you clean as you go, my friends, I find that it's 10 times easier than if you wait until the very end to clean up everything, and then it just seems like a lot of work. So, I have put my bread in our little pressure cooker right here. As you can see, it says high on the heat temperature. So, that's what we're going to wait on. So now your loaf is gonna stay in there for at least 2.5 hours. His forearms are gonna be buff. That's right, my forearms are gonna be so strong. I'll be like Wonder Woman. We're gonna wait for the bread for at least 2.5 hours. But that's pretty much it on how to make your loaf, you guys. So once you put your bread in the cooker, this is the way to check it. If you can push the top and it springs immediately back up, then you're good to go. I would put it in the oven at 350 for about 5 minutes and then slow it down to 250 to finish cooking the bread. That's at least what I do, and I know that's different than the instructions that were originally given. And I think it's due to the ancient grains. I believe that they cook differently. So it just needs that extra time because I found that my dough was still very wet while it was baking. And how you can tell that is, let me bring up my loaf from Monday. All right, this is my big loaf from Monday, monster loaf. She's a little dry. So you can see on the inside of the baked bread that it's very dense in there. This is very thick, almost like a cake. Too thick. This is not good bread. It's tasty, but it doesn't taste right. It's not like bread, more like a cake. So this is too dense. This is too much flour. You can see the layers. They're all way, way, way too close. And it's actually underdone. That's why things are still wet and they don't look exactly like bread on the side when it breaks. So right here up at the top where the crust is, whenever it's underdone baking, you're going to see that it's kind of wet. Like there's a darker line up here than there is in the rest of the bread, and that means it's underdone. That means it's not done cooking yet. It needs to get more heat to expand the different layers inside here. Overdone, I think we all know what overdone looks like. It's going to be very charred, lots of burning, the regular. But underdone, that's what it's going to look like. And as you can see, I made observations over the amount of flour saying it's like too much flour. We don't know if this is working right because you can see on the outside, this bread bakes beautifully. You can see all this sort of rustic shell that it's in, and it's beautiful. It smells so good. It smells just like fresh baked bread, and that is actually my ultimate favorite thing about doing this activity is that when you start baking, your whole house starts smelling like fresh baked bread, like it's a bakery, and it's awesome. It was so good. We were just sitting on the couch watching Marvel, smelling baked bread. Oh, it was lovely. And then this is great for toasting, for serving, butter, jam, any of that stuff. This loaf is great for. And it's not too complicated. And as you saw, if you have the dry ingredients and the wet ingredients at home, food-wise, then it's not hard to make. It's actually quite easy to make. It just takes a little bit of effort, a little bit of time, and some planning. And in addition to that, these ingredients can also help you make, somebody called them quarantine cookies, but it's just peanut butter, honey, or some sort of sugar, so honey, agave, or sugar, eggs, butter, and then you bake them in the oven and you flatten them out with a fork, and that's it. So there's a lot of different recipes and foods you can explore by using these very basic ingredients that you have here. They're also amazing for soups or roux, anything that you're trying to make that has that sort of dense, liquidy texture to it. That is usually from the addition of cornstarch or flour. Sometimes people add flour in. Flour is a great ingredient to use whenever you are making something and it's more liquefied than you want it to. If you add cornstarch or flour in there, it'll actually make it a little bit more dense. So it'll cut down on the amount of liquid inside. What else can I tell you that's a fun fact? There is a difference between baking powder and baking soda. I believe that it just works differently when it's added into different ingredients, different sorts of recipes. So that's what I got for you guys today. So that was baking your basic loaf of bread. And this is my second time doing it, as you all saw and joined with me. So it's really not too complicated, and you can all do it at home. And it's a really nice gift to give right now, especially since everybody is like a little bit struggling, and maybe cookies are not your ideal thing to give to other people, maybe bake them a loaf of bread instead to show them how you care. Oh, thank you, Gabe. Oh, your compliments are so sweet. I hope you do try it. So all of our videos are archived, so you can come and join me in baking bread anytime. You can use it anytime to start your endeavors, start your adventures. And if you have any questions or want to share any baking pictures with me, please do. I would love to see them. So you can email me at kate@2bitcircus.org. And hopefully, if you do send me pictures, I'll be able to send it to our social media team and get them to share the good work that you've been doing while you're at home. I can't wait to see all the bread pictures. I'm going to leave the floor open a little bit because I've got a little bit of time here at the end. Does anybody have any potential bread questions or have any bread tips or tricks that they like, or any cooking questions you may have? I was raised by a food scientist, so I had I had many a play date in the kitchen with my mother, trying different activities, trying different techniques. I guess my best advice for anybody who is starting their cooking journey is to just do it. Literally, like Shia LaBeouf says, just do it! Because it's quite enjoyable, and you can enjoy cooking and not enjoy prepping, because that's the kind of person I am. I hate prepping, but I love cooking, because I love sharing love with other people. Food is my love language, so I do enjoy passing that along to others. Let me show you the bread while we're waiting here. I want to show you the baby bread while it's still cooking. So usually when bakers make bread, they wait for it to rise. They put it into a proofing drawer, or I don't know what else they call it. I've been stuck with Great British Bake Off stuck in my head. So they put it in a proofing drawer in order for it to rise. And the bread being able to rise, I'm sorry, I'm moving all my mechanics around. The bread being able to rise is what gives it the ability to get poofy, get those little holes that you see inside the bread, which is very important to sourdough, actually. The hole structure is very, very important to sourdough, and it's got to be far apart. It's got to have those air bubbles. That's why the lactobacillus is working in there right now with our other batch. Actually, we should check up on her and see what she's doing. Oh, yes. She's doing good. So you can see this is completely different than what I had before when I first pulled it out this morning for you guys. Everything is smooth and a paste, and you can see she's getting a little bigger, so I might end up trying to bake a sourdough loaf next week because I don't know how much I can feed that dough and still be able to control it. Let's see our bread loaf, how it's doing in here. Oh, you can already see already. So let me show you guys. Let me show you guys the bread, how it's risen. Look at the baby! So, as you can tell, that loaf is almost about a size and a half bigger than when I put it in not too long ago. It's already risen at the top. It looks like a loaf. I'm very excited for it. Let's see if it's got a new smell of some kind. Let's see. Oh, yep, that's cooking bread. So we're going to let that baby stay in there longer. I will try to get a picture of us cutting into it later, or just a picture of our finished product to give to our team so that they can post it. You guys can be updated with me on my little bread adventure. So again, thank you guys for joining me. I really had a good time this Thursday. Thank you as always to Vans again for sponsoring us and making these activities happen every morning to you guys. Thank you to the 2-Bit Circus Foundation for all of its love and amazingness and for inspiring me to share my skills with you guys. And if you have anything else for us, please let us know. All right, happy Thursday, everybody.